Hey everybody, and welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy, a weekly video game news podcast broadcasting live Fridays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. If you want to find us on all sorts of social media, you can do so. We are most active on Facebook and Twitter. Find us on Facebook by searching Don't Copy That Floppy podcast, and on Twitter, our handle is @DCTF podcast. Like I've been saying already, you get it by now. It all makes sense. It is Friday, January 5th, 2018.
Wah, wah, wah.
I'm your host, Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Booge.
And there's going to be quite a few stories tonight. We're going to be talking about a very sober and serious story to start off the show, dealing with swatting. After that, we're going to be discussing some more interesting and upbeat news dealing with Nintendo, because you can always count on them to bring upbeat news. And after that, back downhill again for a firing that happened at a game news outlet. And then into some news about leaks from Xbox and are the leaks from anything else? No. Followed by stuff people ripping off PUBG, continuing to rip off PUBG, more of ripping off of PUBG. Gaming disorder. It's been classified. That's happened. It's happening. It's all terrible. And finally, apparently, chips that explode. And I'm just
with cool names.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about flavor-packed Doritos. I'm talking about chips that you put in your computer. Unless you put flavor-packed Doritos in your computer, I have done it from time to time, but it's not usually a good idea.
It's good. It's good as silicone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if
they taste about the same too.
Taste about the same. And when you're gaming, you gotta always have a snack on hand. So
right. Yeah,
it's a good... Okay, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about games that just came out and games that are coming out.
I think that joke just got swatted.
Ooh, that's a bad way to segue into our first story, which is actually really serious.
It is, and sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, no, so in swatting, it's a bad thing. It's been talked about on the show in the past. I think it was like 2016 was a big year for that. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of reports on it, like game developers were getting swatted and stuff. It was crazy. And then for 2017, there really wasn't much news about it at all. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I knew that swatting things were still going on, but it seemed like they were tapering off because they weren't making the news anymore.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember if it was at the very end of last year or the very beginning of this year. But a really bad incident happened. This is a story from CNN. It's from January 4th. And it is about two men, Andrew Finch and Tyler Barris. And apparently, Andrew Finch was swatted by Tyler Barris. And this was... let's see here. Oh, no, there isn't a date. Okay. Man, why does this article give a date? This is stupid. He was swatted by Tyler Barris, and the SWAT team came to his house. Oh, quick side note. For those who don't know what swatting is, because I haven't discussed it in a while, it is the thing where somebody calls in basically a prank call to 911 saying, oh, somebody at this address is like holding their family hostage, or they have a gun, or they've murdered someone, or they've done something really terrible and are an imminent threat. So the SWAT team needs to go there and deal with it. And at many points in the past, this had often been done to streamers while they were streaming, so that the people who were pranking them could get a good laugh out of watching them be tackled by SWAT members on stream.
You get a good laugh out of wasting everyone's tax dollars.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the thing. When we talked about it in the past, I was always saying, like, okay, best case scenario, all you're doing is wasting people's time and money. But worst case scenario, we know that there are a lot of gun deaths in the U.S. from law enforcement. and it's really just a matter of time before someone gets hurt, and that is what appears to have happened in this situation. Andrew Finch was swatted. The SWAT team showed up at his door. He went and answered the door, and they shot him and killed him. Or rather, they shot him. He was bleeding out. Then he was rushed to the hospital, and he died either in transit or at the medical facility. Tyler Barris was immediately found and arrested and charged, which I'll give the police some credit for doing that so quickly, because since it was all done sort of a little more anonymously, because it was just over the phone, I didn't really expect them to be able to find him that quickly. So Tyler Barris, who is 25, Andrew Finch, I believe, was 28.
Yeah.
Tyler Barris was arrested, and I guess he's extradited to Kansas, because Tyler Barris is a native of California, and Andrew Finch was a native of Wichita, Kansas. So, he's facing charges for this, and I hope that Tyler Barris goes away for a long time.
Yeah. Especially, it's like, this is the sort of thing you'd expect from, like, I don't know, like a 16-year-old, but this dude's fucking 25 and apparently has a history of doing these kind of things.
Yeah. And there was something about, like, his Twitter handle was sounded
Swatistic.
like... Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it sounds like a real good dude.
But apparently the way it went down is Tyler Barris is playing Call of Duty World War II online one night, gets in an argument with someone he's playing with, like people who play shooters do all the freaking time. And I guess it's a little unclear from this article, but it seems like what went down is that he wanted to retaliate against this guy he was mad at in game, and then a third party, somebody else who was in game with him, messaged him and was like, "Oh, you should SWAT this guy because I know you do that. You should SWAT this guy, and this is his address." And then Tyler Barris said, "Okay, cool." And then he used that address, and that ended up being Andrew Finch's address, which was not the person he was playing Call of Duty with. It was just a random other person who wasn't even online at the time. Apparently,
that's the fucking. I mean, that's just the shit cherry on top of the shit sundae.
Yeah, it's not. He had nothing. Guy. Yeah, he had nothing to do with this scenario at all. His family was saying like, "Oh, he's not even that into gaming." So I think one of the other people who it mentions in this article that they're trying to find them, but another person who really needs to be found is that random person online who said, "Hey Tyler, here's the address of this person. You should SWAT them." Because like that guy was someone who knew Finch and did not like him and targeted him. Yeah. Presumably. Or maybe they just gave a random address. I mean, I guess that's kind of possible, but...
Yeah. I could just name an address somewhere.
And it could just be in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know. Yeah. But one of the other things to be addressed in this story, aside from the fact that swatting is terrible and it needs to continue to be cracked down on, is the SWAT team, the police, who show up at this guy's house. He answers the door, and then they immediately shoot him.
Yeah. Did they mention? I think they said that like he went to like adjust his belt or something like that.
Classic cop line.
Yeah.
So his family, Finch's family, talks about how let's see, they talk about how it should be a crime to do stuff like this, but the cops should shoulder some of the blame.
Right, because that's it's probably not the best use of training if you're just gonna have someone shoot someone like right out the gate for no reason. I also always wonder. I know the answer is to protect our cops or whatever, but why don't they use less lethal methods? Like, why didn't they fucking tase him or fucking, pepper spray the dude or something?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they were close enough to have pepper sprayed him. I mean, that's obviously a shorter range thing. Tasers kind of have not as long a range as guns, but can have a longer range.
Or use a beanbag shells in a shotgun.
Totally.
which can still kill you, but a lot less likely than a fucking bullet.
Yeah, they can still kill you depending on where you're shot.
That's why that's because they had to change the classification from non-lethal to like less lethal or whatever, because someone can be allergic to pepper spray and fucking go into shock when you use it on them or something.
But
anyway, yeah, this is fucking, it's horrible, and it's an unfortunate sign of how immature certain portions of the gaming culture still are, that they do shit like this at 25 years old. You know, it's really unfortunate. But
in a weird way, it speaks a little bit to what we were talking about last week when we did our retrospective. We were talking about YouTubers like PewDiePie, right?
Yeah.
Who, a lot of the stupid things he says would be the kind of things that I would expect a 12-year-old to say, or a 10-year-old to say online. But he is really encouraged by a lot of his fan base to act this way. So I think there definitely is something really pervasive in online culture in general, but also in gamer culture, where it's just like being immature is rewarded, and people love that. I mean, this guy wasn't even initially, like, Tyler Barris wasn't initially thinking of swatting this person until a third party who was a fan of his came forward and said, hey, I love watching you swat people, so go and swat this guy.
Right.
So it's not like there's an even greater argument that, like, this is the result of a toxic fan base, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that there is not only people that do it, but people that like to watch people do it. Because, I mean, like, I've seen those videos of the Twitch streamers getting their fucking doors kicked in and shit. And it's like, it's horrifying to me, but I can understand that some people, like, find it funny or something. But, you know, that's because we live in a post-sincerity world. But, yeah, it's just... It's a shitty thing. Don't swat people, and don't encourage swatting people. I'd also like to mention, although this is a very serious thing, I love when sites like CNN, like real news sites, have to write about video games, because you get some real gems of them writing like they're trying to explain it to a grandmother, because they are.
Oh, yeah, I saw this. Yep, I know you.
Like, just
exactly
in the very beginning of the article. Very beginning of the article, it appears Andrew Finch's swatting death began with an online session of Call of Duty World War II. It's a violent video game designed to emulate combat as seen from a soldier's point of view. That's That's an amazing way to explain what an FPS is.
Yep.
That's pretty great. But, yeah. So, don't be fucking lame online.
Yeah.
It leads to people getting shot by the police.
I mean, I think what's one of the things I'm still fearing, the only way in which this is going to get worse, that I can think of, is if we have this same thing happen, but it does happen to someone who's streaming, and then we get that live video footage of someone being murdered on stream, and then, you know, news outlets will pick that up in a second because there's video footage of it, and we'll just see it all over the place, and that's gonna be bad. And it's
gonna be bad. It's a matter of time. I'm surprised that there hasn't been any, like, I don't know, like, I don't think there's been anybody that's, like, committed suicide on Twitch or anything like that, like, but I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. I mean, they've got to be Twitch has got to be accounting for something like that to happen at some point. You know, they're not, and if they're not, then they're stupid.
Yeah,
like, because it's going to happen sometime or another.
Moving on to something a little more upbeat. Nintendo. Those cool
Yoshi.
guys. Yeah. We apparently there's a rumor that there is a Nintendo Direct planned for January 11th. So next week on Thursday. This was actually from the ResetEra community boards. So there we go. The new NeoGAF is already earning their keep with some great news.
Yeah, they've been the source of a couple stories over the past weeks, and so yeah, making a comeback.
But apparently, this is there was a rumor stems from this past weekend's revelation that Amazon had published and removed 18 placeholder game listings for the Nintendo Switch. So not only are we going to see a Nintendo Direct soon, which we kind of expected anyway that there was going to be one this month, but 18 placeholder game listings means, man, they're hitting this year hard.
Mamma mia.
Which is great and totally makes sense that they would want to do that because they just, as we reported last week, they just came off last year doing gangbusters. We're going to report in a second about how they're continuing to do gangbusters. So it is the time for them to just be like, let's just pump out content for this console.
Yeah, if they can manage to do it, then they should absolutely do it. As far as the rumor of the Direct goes, it's all but pretty much confirmed that it's going to happen, at least, if not next week, then soon, sometime this month. The 18 placeholder game listings is interesting. They can't all be like big first-party titles. Like,
No.
There's probably some indie stuff in there if it's real, if there's actually 18 games being announced. I just wonder, like, what else are they going to show at a big Direct event? Like, what else do they have, really, besides basically pushing for a lot of indie stuff? They still haven't shown anything from Metroid Prime 4. They still can show things for Bayonetta 3. Trying to think what else they got. A lot of people have been talking that they might have some kind of Smash announcement, which I think
cool.
is likely. Either a port of what was the last one called? Smash for Wii U, I think. Call it like Smash for Switch, which is a good name. Or the one like the pie in the sky dream that I think is kind of improbable, but some people are saying that they're actually going to announce that they're making a whole new Smash for the Switch. Which may happen eventually, but right now that seems like a tall order, seeing as the other one's not that old and it has a ton of content for it. And yeah, I don't know. What else do you think they could announce outside of new IP?
They could talk. They could finally talk about virtual console stuff, I guess.
Oh, that'll never happen, Lex. I mean that's the dream. Everyone wants the virtual consoles, but those little boxes, those little Super Nintendo classics sell way too well.
No, it's true. That's very true. I'm wondering if it would be like, because we know that the little boxes are great because they're cheap to manufacture.
Right.
And that's partly just because the tech that's on them is just so minimal to run those 8 and 16-bit games. And I'm sure it would be pretty minimal to run a lot of the early 3D stuff too, but I'm curious as to whether they would be like, here's like most of the like big deal Wii games. We can have those on Virtual Console or something like that, right? Because it's like, there are still great games in there, but it's not so far back that it would be something they could easily manufacture as a mini console.
Right. It'd also be kind of weird. Yeah, it'd be kind of weird to manufacture like a mini Wii console.
Yeah.
I mean, Virtual Console is the golden egg that they are not willing to crack open yet. Nintendo's one of the only companies that can really make that much money off of their past content just because their IP is so strong. And they are going to milk it for all it's worth. It's just a matter of time. I guess I'm not confused why they're waiting so long. Like I said, those little classics do really well, but it just seems like something they would have wanted to get out by holiday of last year, like right around this time. It would have been the Virtual Console because there's way more Wiis out in the wild, or rather, way more Switches rather. So it's strange to me. If they do announce Virtual Console, that'd be big. To what degree they'll announce that, to what kind of games will be playable, we'll see.
Who knows?
But Nintendo cannot be stopped, apparently.
No. How well is Nintendo stuff selling?
Nintendo's stuff is selling really, really good. In fact, the best in U.S. all time. So this is from GameSpot from today. Nintendo Switch got off to a hot start at launch last year, and that success carried through to the end of 2017. According to Nintendo, the system has now broken another record in the United States. Through its first 10 months on the market, Switch is now the fastest-selling home console. In those 10 months, which covered the period from launch in March 2017 through the beginning of this month, Nintendo has sold 4.8 million Switch units in the U.S. That figure tops the mark set by any previous home console in the first 10 months in the market, including the record set by the Wii, which sold 4 million units in the U.S. in a comparable span of time. Through September, Switch sales stood at 2 million units. This is also interesting. Nintendo shared news about some of its platform's major games, how they've done. Breath of the Wild, Switch's big launch game, has seen an attach rate of over 55%, which is crazy by any standards. In the U.S., meaning sales are at least 2.64 million units. Odyssey, Super Mario Odyssey, despite having launched at the end of October, is already at a 60% attach rate, which is fucking nuts. I mean, I talked about nuts. Attach rates in Switch like last week, I think, but Nintendo is one of the, once again, they're the strength of their IP. And if you don't know what attach rate means, it means the amount of people that own the game that also own the Switch. So 60% of all people that own the Switch own Super Mario Odyssey. That for any console, for any IP, that's crazy. But it's Nintendo and it's Mario, so of course they're going to own it. But that's the kind of thing that, makes Nintendo's basically making double the money. For every Switch unit they sell, over 50% are going to buy a copy of Breath of the Wild, and over 50% are going to buy Mario Odyssey. So double dipping. So Switch is the fastest selling console in U.S. history. When are they going to stop? When's the top, Lex?
Oh, geez. I mean, I was really surprised that it was like, oh, it's outpacing the Wii. And I'm like, holy shit. Because the Wii was a phenomenon.
It was.
Although I think it's interesting because that sort of speaks to this idea that the Wii was seen as, if you were to just watch like the news reports, right, you would assume that the Wii was just such a bigger deal. And I think it's just because the old people loved the Wii, so right. all the CNNs of the world could be like, oh, we can do news reports on this because our target audience is actually interested in this thing.
Right.
So, but with the Switch, I mean, grandma and your parents are not getting a Switch. That's not happening. It's just
Probably not.
It's just that all of these gamers really love it and are buying it. And I think it's that people are all buying it as their second console because it's got a cheaper price point than everything else, and because it's mobile. So it's probably the mindset of a lot of these people are just like, oh, well, I can sit down on my couch and play Call of Duty, but when I leave the house, I want to keep gaming, so I'll bring my Wii with me. Or
right, on the bus or the train or whatever. You gotta be able to SWAT from anywhere. Sorry. Yeah, this is, and that's why you'll never see Call of Duty on Switch, not because it's, graphically too hard to run. I mean, this is crazy. I think I'd be interested. I can't remember what the Wii's sales trajectory was like. If I recall correctly, they didn't start selling really crazy until the second year, because it was that it came out, a lot of gamers bought it, and then they went home the next year and showed it off to their parents, and they showed them Wii bowling and whatnot, and then their grandma bought the Wii, and that's when it kind of shot off into the stratosphere. Could be wrong about that, but nonetheless, I think this shows sign that, I mean, well, first of all, there's a lot of millennials with disposable income, people around our age that are, like you said, already own either a PC or a primary console, and they want to pick up the Switch because, like you said, you can play it on the bus and stuff. I think the timing of the Switch was right because it came out kind of in between console cycles, so if you were going to buy a PS4 or an Xbox One, you already have it. You already bought it a couple years ago, probably. So by that time, you can swing to spend another $300 on a Nintendo console. And also, I just think that the offerings were too good. You look at Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, they're obviously amazing games, and you can only get them on the Switch. Unlike, with the Wii U, it came out, and then, I remember when the Wii U came out, they, I didn't even hear about any games that were on it. I was just like, well, what fucking games are on this thing? What do you play on it? And they didn't have any games, and I think that's kind of somewhat what led to its downfall.
Well, there was also, in the early days of it, they were like, oh, this is coming out on the Wii and the Wii U. And I'm just like, oh, that's not good, because that just furthers the confusion that people think this is a weird peripheral for the Wii.
Right, yeah, the naming was off by a mile.
But, let's not talk about Nintendo's past mistakes. Let's just hope they've learned from them and the future is bright for their stuff. Yeah, good for them. Keeping on doing it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where the tail, where it starts to teeter off or at least level off.
Once it does, we're gonna get some graphs and some charts.
Gonna get some charts and graphs with Mario pointing at them.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
So what's going on at IGN?
IGN apparently is crumbling. So this is a report from Jason Schreier at Kotaku. IGN fires editor-in-chief for alleged misconduct. The massive gaming website IGN has fired its editor-in-chief, Steve Butts, after an investigation into... all right, you're going to have to not... You're going to have to stick with me here, Lex.
Okay.
After an investigation into alleged workplace misconduct, the company said, quote, IGN initiated an investigation into alleged misconduct involving Steve Butts. As a result of the investigation, the company has appropriately determined to part ways with Mr. Butts, said IGN General Manager Mitch Galbraith in a statement with Kotaku this afternoon. This news comes 2 months after former IGN employee Kelly Plagy accused her former coworker Vince Ingenito of sexually harassing her and another woman. Ingenito was let go in March of 2017. The Monday after Plagy made those accusations, IGN's editorial staff had several meetings about what happened and eventually decided to put a statement committing to fix what is broken within the company's culture. During one of those meetings, someone accused Butts of harassment, according to the person who was in the room. The accuser did not share more details in the meeting, but IGN consequently began investigating what happened. So basically what happens is they send him to work from home for a while they investigate this, and they find him guilty, apparently, and have fired him. Steve Butts has been the editor-in-chief there for a fucking long time, as far back as I can remember. So this is good. This is good. It's good that, even in the kind of, like we were saying, the kind of shitty, toxic culture of gaming, how gaming can be kind of a shitty, toxic culture sometimes, even down to the tendrils of enthusiast press like IGN, that it's actually getting a shake-up, and perhaps things are turning out for the better. And if these people did fucking do horrible things, that they're getting their comeuppance, even at some place as big as IGN.
Yeah, and it speaks to the story from a couple months back in a very interesting way, because we had the way that story was talked about. She had what was her name? Plagy had said that she had gone to a lot of the higher ups in IGN to complain that she was being harassed, and pretty much nothing had been done about it, or very little had been done about it. And I was like, oh, so one of the people who was probably had a say in what to do about that situation was also a sexual harasser. I guess that, speaks to why not very much was done when she complained.
Yeah. And that there might have been systematic problems in place.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good that he's out of there and that they're trying to fix stuff. I hope that they're able to turn that around. It would be It would be unfortunate to hear about another story about them in 2 months.
Right, exactly. But if that's what happens, that's what happens. If that's what it takes to shake up the beast. I think it doesn't matter. Because, in my opinion, sites like IGN and GameSpot, they'll stay around, but their relevance is pretty much nil at this point. People follow influencers like you and me, Lex. But I'm, actual people that actually listen to people, not like us, who no one listens to. I think the written enthusiast press outside of people like Jason Schreier or like some people over at Waypoint, like people that are actually doing actual games journalism, the few people that are, outside of them, I think that it's kind of dead. People just go to YouTube to get the news that they want, and they listen to PewDiePie or whoever, and that's who they get their opinions from.
Yeah.
So, there'll always be an IGN there because there's too much advertising money behind it, and there's too much site traffic. There's too much potential for advertising to really ever have it go away. But, if it all crumbles due to sexual allegations, it would be timely, in my opinion.
Interesting. Let's move on to some leaks from Microsoft. So, I admit to not entirely understanding the technicality of this story. It's a story entitled Xbox Live API SDK Leak. See right there, I'm already lost. Provides outlook on upcoming Xbox One exclusive games. So what I'm getting from this is, and I think this is also from ResetEra, maybe. Is that there's this guy, a Reset user, Clobril. Yeah.
Clobril.
Apparently was able to get access to the Xbox Live API SDK somehow. I guess he had used some login entry to their database tables in the past and farmed that for some information, and then put some stuff up on the forums. And he went to go do it again, and his login was like still valid somehow. And he commented like, "Wow, so my login still works. That's insane." No one bothered to patch that up after his last leak. He sort of wanted to protect his tracks in a kind of interesting way. So he wanted to talk about the information that he saw in this database, but he didn't want to just straight up say, "I saw this and this and this thing." Instead, he said, "Okay, I'm going to just make a wish list of things that I wish were in the database and be really coy about them and kind of like mysterious a little bit. So, I won't get sued."
Right.
So he talked about how I'll read his wish list. I would love to revisit Albion. Project name could be Wisdom. A UK studio should do it. So that was apparently they're going to make another Fable game, is what that implies. The last Fable project was that stupid, wasn't it like an Overwatch style Fable game? Fable Legends, maybe.
Yeah, that one, did that ever come out?
No, it got canned.
Okay, yeah, because that went through like some changes. That originally it was almost like a non symmetrical like multiplayer game where someone played like a dungeon master kind of thing.
Yep. And it actually looked interesting then. And then it showed up at like the next year's E3 and it just looked like Overwatch, but fantasy.
Right, because of course.
Yep. So that got canned, but apparently, yes, they're working on another Fable game, which is interesting because, I mean, I guess there's money to be made off that franchise. It's not.
There's a lot of that. It has name recognition.
Yeah, it's because it's like if anything, that franchise. I mean, it peaked probably on Fable 2, I'd assume, because Fable 1 was very poorly received, and Fable 2 was like actually a good playable game, and then Fable 3 people kind of lost interest. But you could make an argument that it's been long enough since Fable 3 that they could try to revitalize it, and they might get some sales.
Sure.
But a UK studio should do it. Oh, that's cool. As long as they keep it away from Molyneux, they'll be fine.
Yeah, he's never touching that franchise again.
Hopefully not. Jeez.
You go plant a seed, and you come back, and a tree will be there. We're gonna make you love this dog. This dog, you're gonna love the dog.
So he goes on to say, "I would love to play around with Miss Dark again. The Coalition should definitely help. If it's a third-person game, I mean, not them alone, obviously." So people were talking about how this is a Perfect Dark game.
Yeah.
And I was
that one's stranger to me than Fable.
Yeah, that's super weird, because I still will say that Perfect Dark on the N64 is just better than GoldenEye. It is like the same game, but better.
Besides the Far Side.
Yeah. And then they made another one more. I don't remember what era they made it in. But
Perfect Dark Zero came out in 2005
and was horrible. So we just pretend that one doesn't exist. But if they, honest to goodness, like tried to revitalize the franchise and did the cool things that the original did with like interesting weapons and stuff, which I will point out is something that you still don't see very often in games. Like,
not really.
I remember seeing, I think it was in Wolfenstein, there were some cool weapons that did interesting things. And there was another game. What was it called?
You know, honestly, I don't really like the games that much, but some of the more recent Call of Duty games, the ones that take place in the future, had some cool like future tech that they played around with in the games.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they? And Resistance: Fall of Man. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes.
That had a bunch of super cool kinds of weapons, but you don't see cool, creative kinds of weapons in shooters nearly enough. I feel so. Yeah,
outside of Overwatch.
yeah. Well, Overwatch. So I would kind of be interested in that, but I think that's super strange, just like you do. I wouldn't expect.
No one
to do
knows.
that.
No one under the age of 25 knows what Perfect Dark is.
Yeah.
you know. And even at that, it's not like it just doesn't have a lot of brand recognition. Although Microsoft has the rare IP catalog that they don't really use much of, so then it's a possibility. I mean, same thing with Fable. It's like they have all these IP catalogs that they don't do much with. So maybe they want to do something with them.
Yeah. He says, I would also love to play the Crackdown 3 campaign in 4-player co-op, which basically means the Crackdown 3 campaign will have 4-player co-op, which is cool, and I totally believe it.
I can't believe Crackdown 3 is not out yet, or it hasn't been.
So
like
weird.
I feel like it's been so long that
I'm very worried that game's going to suck when it finally comes out.
It's going to.
Disappointing. He says he would love to play Forza with the rising sun on the horizon. So Forza news, which I would try to read into his cryptic statement more, but I just don't give a shit about Forza. So
yeah, basically the idea is that he's suggesting it takes place in Japan.
Sure. I just don't care about Forza.
Yeah.
He says he would love to play AoE 4 soon, but it's probably super early. So Age of Empires 4 apparently is starting to get worked on. I'm super into that. That'd be awesome.
I love Age of Empires.
Let's see. I would love to have a really high player count, connections per session, for Xbox biggest franchise. So a lot of people, this is raising a lot of ears, because it's like, oh, what's Xbox's biggest franchise? And a bunch of people are like, Halo, I guess. So a Halo game with high player count. So Halo via Star Wars Battlefront, something like that.
Or fucking Halo PUBG.
Or Halo PUBG. Yep. So, and people love ripping off PUBG's formula, so
yes,
we could see it. We could see it. That would be odd. But hey, they made a Halo RTS game, so I would not put it past them to make.
They made more than one Halo RTS game.
Yeah, like why the hell is there a sequel to that?
People like it, I guess.
So bizarre. But yeah, so I wouldn't put it past them to make a Halo PUBG game. Let's see. Oh, and I'm sure Phil, who I assume is Phil Spencer, likes mechs, which I don't know, Mech Assault game. That's what people are saying. I doubt I get anything for Conquer, Banjo, or Crimson Skies in the foreseeable future. Okay, I wouldn't expect to see any of that stuff in the foreseeable future. I would like to, but I don't expect it. Especially not Conquer. They've teased us with Conquer for so long and then never delivered anything.
Yeah. No, you're never going to get a Conquer game.
No.
I don't think Banjo-Kazooie's in a weird position where it's half owned by Nintendo, I think.
Oh, really?
So that's there's some weird licensing issues with that last time I read about it.
But it was interesting. I thought a really and the way he presented the information was just amusing. So
yeah, because it's really blatant.
But yeah, so I was kind of intrigued by that and interested to see when we next hear from Microsoft how much of that pans out and what kind of stuff is going on with it.
Most of it sounds pretty reasonable. I mean, they gotta dig into their catalog and do something with it.
Yeah, except Perfect Dark. The only thing that seems bizarre is Perfect Dark. Although
I can picture it. I can picture him trying to do something with it. Not a first-person shooter again, but something with the IP.
So let's talk about people ripping off PUBG.
Yeah.
They love to do it. But to be fair, the game that's doing it this time is a game that's known for ripping off other games. So they're really just staying true to themselves by doing this. The game Paladins, which a lot of people cite as being a blatant ripoff of Overwatch, because I mean, man, it's really similar to Overwatch. Has decided that they just released a trailer for Paladins Battlegrounds. So they're not even being subtle about it. They're just like, hey, guess what, everybody? You can play Paladins with all the cool Paladins characters, and you'll be dropped into a giant map and fight each other, and you'll all have one life. And I'm like, oh. And they also are like, oh, and there's going to be like blimps that drop special unique items that you'll have to scrounge for on the map. And I'm like, yeah, so it's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, except with the Overwatch art aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a ripoff of a ripoff.
Yep. And I know, it's the only thing that is not obvious, I don't think, unless they say it in their statement, but I don't think that they do, is that there is no... I don't think there's... No, wait, never mind. I'm wrong. They do say in their statement that the all-encompassing fog shortens the size of the battlefield.
Yeah.
I hadn't initially seen that in their statement, and I was like, oh, maybe they will actually be slightly different, but no, it's exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Exactly the same.
It's called Battlegrounds.
It's called Battlegrounds. Also, the trailer, which I'm not going to play right now, is atrocious.
It's amazing. It's got this Sonic the Hedgehog butt rock playing.
Oh my gosh, the butt rock is like the most vomit-inducing bullshit.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Fuck yeah, Sonic, gotta go fast. Chili dogs.
It keeps zooming in on different like corpses of players who have died, and then there's a really, really badly choreographed fight in-game graphics between a couple of players, and one of them gets backstabbed, and it's like the least, because of the way that like the camera angle is, and just the overall mood of the trailer being like kind of shitty. There's like nothing dramatic or suspenseful about it whatsoever.
It's also illogical because it shows how many players are left alive in the corner, and that like the guy like wipes his brow, and I'm like, you would not be doing that. It's like, have you ever seen the end of a PUBG game? It's like the most fucking heart-pounding, ridiculously tense thing ever.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is Paladins staying true to themselves and just ripping off everyone else.
I find this really interesting because at this point, I think it's fair to say that like the PUBG format, the Battle Royale format, is the same as like hero shooters or MOBAs were, where MMOs were, where it's basically just a trend now in gaming. Yeah, like it's just a type of game that people are going to be making. Like when Dota got huge, or League of Legends got huge, everyone tried to make a MOBA. When WoW got huge, everyone tried to make an MMO. That was a much more expensive prospect. And then the hero shooter fucking thing that happened, which was pretty short-lived, but a lot of people tried, including Paladins. I think it's interesting that a game that tried to follow a trend is now shifting gears to follow another trend.
They gotta chase those dollars.
You gotta chase them fucking hoop dollars. You gotta license more butt rock for your game, so you gotta make money.
Jesus, learn how to make a good cutscene, for Christ's sake. You're trying to rip off Blizzard originally.
Well, they're definitely trying to do like I remember like WoW commercials like this, whether they did like in-game what's it called, machinima, or whatever.
Yeah.
Except they're clever and they have like good animators and stuff, and these people obviously don't.
Oh man,
our friends over at High Res Studios.
Oh god, they're so, even their name isn't creative.
I know.
So yeah, we'll see if they can, what their player counts are for that. I'm kind of curious to see how well it does.
Spoiler alert: it's not going to do well.
Hey, listen, Fortnite did incredibly well, and it was an obvious ripoff.
It was, but Fortnite has Epic Games behind it.
Yeah,
no one knows what High Res Studios is.
I mean, that's true, but in the early days of Overwatch, when Paladins came out to capitalize on it, I remember reading reports about how Paladins was like doing pretty darn well.
Was it?
Yeah, like I don't think it does well anymore, which is why they're doing this. But yeah, no, I think it's made money So I'm curious as to how well it will chase this trend and cash in.
Yeah. Who knows? Got to be. They'll do better than Lawbreakers, which is a story I didn't add. But real quickly, Nexon, the company that publishes Lawbreakers, wrote off the entire game as a financial loss.
Oof.
The
Oh,
entire
my,
price of development has been written off.
oh my god. That was Cliffy B's game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad. That's so sad. Man.
Utter failure.
Shoot. You know, I mean, I didn't
Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't play it because it was a hero shooter, and I don't play Overwatch. I don't play hero shooters. But I did look at it, and I was like, okay, this is a hero shooter that has like it has its own art style. It has pretty darn good graphics, and it has the game mechanics of like leaping around and doing anti-gravity stuff that we know Cliffy B has done in the past and is good at doing. So I was really hoping that it would like, I didn't expect it to be giant, and I didn't necessarily want it to be, but I wanted it to be a good case study in what Cliffy B would talk about as his AA games, where it could be a solid game that found its niche and could just exist there, and it's really disappointing that it wasn't able to do that to me.
Yeah, and he was selling it for like $30 or something.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It's a lot of problems with that. I mean, the only recognizable thing for that game was Cliffy B, and it's like no one knows the studio. Lawbreakers is kind of a shitty name.
Yeah.
There is like a psychology of pricing games at $30 that makes people think that it's less than higher quality. Mm-hmm. And like it was a PC only first person shooter that didn't really have like the artistic or animatronic gravitas of something like Overwatch. So yeah, it's just a total failure. But they can turn around and make a Battlegrounds version out of it. So there you go.
Cash in.
Cash in, baby.
Yeah. So I also think that's interesting because that's kind of like the difference between the hero shooter trend and the battle royale trend is I feel like hero shooters are just more costly and difficult to develop than the battle royale style maps, because it's just like for battle royale you just make a big map and then you randomly play shit on it and then you have it shrink over a time limit and pretty much leave everything else up to the players, and it's like, do we really have to worry about balance if people just find random shit? I don't know.
Not really.
Not really.
I mean, if you already, you could like, I mean, the thing that's hardest to do is to just have the big enough draw distance to make a big ass map. That is, you could do it with Overwatch, I guess. You know, like I'm sure they could make it work.
But they don't need to because they're making so much money doing what they're doing.
I think the thing with hero shooters, in particular, like Overwatch, is that a large part of the reason why Overwatch did well is not because it's balanced well, or it's not because it's like the best shooter. It's because people actually fell in love with those characters. Those characters had a lot of character. You know, like people identify with some of those characters and like to play them because they're animated well and they have personality, and that's something that not a lot of companies or studios can do. Like Blizzard has like Pixar level fucking animators working for them, so they can manage to do that. But a lot, like when I look at Paladins, look at those characters, like I don't get anything from those characters.
I look at them and all I see are like weird fantasy ripoffs of Overwatch characters. But no, I mean, Blizzard has always been good at capitalizing on that. I mean, all their cutscenes for all their games for forever have been like, you know, really drilled home the like having cool characters and cool stuff going on, and really gotten people like whoever watched them was like, oh man, I gotta play that game just because I know the game's not going to be anything like that cutscene, but man, that was a good cutscene.
Yeah, totally. And like there's honestly there's a video from a professional animator talking about the first person animations in Overwatch and how like just subtly amazing they are, and there's like shit I never even noticed. I'm like, wow. It is pretty, the level, I mean, it's Blizzard, so the level of polish there is just unreal, you know? Like, that's all their games. Like, all of their games animating is, like, amazing. Like, you look at, like, Diablo 3, and it's, like, the one thing about the game is you push one button, and it's, like, the most amazing attack animation you've ever seen, and bones fly everywhere, and You get showered with loot. It's like the input to response ratio in that game is fucking crazy. And yeah, Blizzard's always been good about that stuff.
It's true. Let's turn to a very annoying topic. Gaming disorder.
Gaming disorder. It's an actual disease, according to the World Health Organization. It's from GameSpot a couple days ago. The World Health Organization, the WHO, the Public Health Division of the United Nations, has released its newest list of classified diseases, and quote-unquote gaming disorder is included. A draft of the WHO's International Classification of Diseases, the ICD, described this as being characterized by a pattern of persistence or recurrent gaming behavior, online or offline. The description goes on to say that the gaming disorders can include the following. 1. Impaired control over gaming, e.g. onset, frequency, intensity, duration, termination, context. 2. Increasing priority giving to gaming to the extent that gaming takes precedent over other life interests and daily activities. Who's ever done that? And 3, continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. People suffering from the so-called gaming disorder run the risk of a significant impairment to their personal, family, social, education, and occupational lives, according to the World Health Organization. The description goes on to say that gaming disorder can be a continuous condition or it can be an episodic or reoccurrent in nature. For it to be suggested that a person has gaming disorder, they would display these behavior patterns for a year or longer. They also introduced a term called hazardous gaming, which is slightly different and kind of leans more towards like people that like died from gaming too much, like in Korea and stuff. You get those stories every once in a while. So what do you think about this, Lex?
You know, I actually gotta say that I don't entirely disagree with The Who.
Yeah, I don't either.
I love their albums, but
yeah. Pinball Wizard.
Pinball Wizard was great. But no, they I don't disagree. I just think that they need to be careful where applying this, because this kind of thing, I think there's a good argument to be made that it totally exists, but it's pretty rare.
Well, it's kind of, the way that they describe it is kind of strange, but I'm really of two minds of it. I also agree that it's probably, it will benefit someone, because I know people that do kind of have an addictive nature when it comes to gaming from time to time, and we've all been there, that you've had those days where you spend 18 hours playing a game kind of nonstop and you lose track of time. And then you get up after you're done and your eyes are all like, bloodshot and you're like, oh, my back. Oh, God. Like, that's not healthy. But we've all done it. Anyone that's really considers himself a person that plays video games to any degree. I mean, it's happened. Like, that happens every time a new Civilization game comes out for me. I play it for like 18 hours straight and it's like, just one more turn, yep. And, before you know it, your whole day's gone. And you haven't showered or anything. I think that is something of a disorder, and I think for some people it's way worse. I certainly remember when World of Warcraft came out, and by golly, were there a lot of people that were straight up addicted to that shit, like no joke addicted. The problem I have though is that what about the person that sits in front of their TV and binges a Netflix show for 18 hours? There's no World Health Organization classification for that. That's essentially the same thing, So I think it's a bit of I think the intentions are good, but the reason that they looked at this over that is because gaming still, even though it's not the 90s anymore, still gaming has this kind of stigma attached to it. Which you can obviously see from our first story. There is some negative fucking elements of the gaming culture. You don't see like fans of Black Mirror swatting each other. So yeah, I think that in the end it could lead to helping some people, but it just makes me kind of roll my eyes when I'm like, of course they pick gaming for this and not something else, because it's still got that kind of stigma.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree. I think that more attention should be paid to a lot of the other things that people use as escapism, because it seems like in the modern age we maybe indulge in escapism a little too much.
a little
bit too much. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a good reason to try to escape. Well, I know who's president of the United States. But even so, that's not doesn't mean that's a healthy way to deal with those issues. So
Yeah, and some people, some people turn to drugs or alcohol. Some people turn to gambling. I think that, yeah, those are all just different ways of escapism with different levels of bodily harm and, life harm. And yeah, gaming can definitely probably be a part of that. It's just, yeah, it's just I'm surprised that no one is like, oh, binging. I think it's funny that like binging TV, and we've talked about this before, how like you're trying to anti-binge TV. But like, I think it's funny that that's almost like it's like a joke. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna binge watch shit this week. It's like, it's like kind of not healthy.
Yeah.
Like
sitting stationary for an entire day in front of a television, not good for you.
Right, exactly. And like, you know what? Over the Christmas vacation, I may have spent 1 or 2 whole days watching Next Generation episodes.
Yeah,
but,
make it so.
Make it engage. But but that's the holidays, and sometimes you gotta indulge a little bit. You gotta get your Wesley Crusher on.
Get this boy off the bridge.
You gotta get him off the bridge, Mr. Crusher. But yeah, so I think that at the end of the day, it might help a couple people, but I also think that this is going to lead to a lot of pearl clutching moms, being like, "Oh, my son has gaming disorder," when he's really just doesn't. So yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Oh, the Who. If only you just go. I just wish you'd go back to music.
Yeah. World Health Organization leader Keith Moon. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. So last story of the night, we're talking about Intel. So this is crazy to me. This is like, it's just crazy to me. So Intel is facing multiple class action lawsuits over chip security flaw. Now this is sort of the follow up to the story from earlier, which was the chip security flaw. The two flaws, which were dubbed Spectre and Meltdown.
So badass.
Yeah, no, so badass. They could be James Bond movies.
One of them is.
They're like a flaw in Intel chips. And it like, I don't know, it just like would break your processor. Did it actually like physically fry them, or did it just make them stop working? That's the one thing.
I don't think it actually is melting them down.
I really wanted it to actually set them on fire. But I thought that was too much to hope for. Yeah, so this was a big problem, and Intel has released patches to try and get around this. Apparently, the meltdown flaw they have basically circumvented with their patch, but the Spectre one is more widespread. I guess it affects all sorts of chipsets, so primarily Intel, but I guess it'll affect others as well. And their patch supposedly helps against that, but is not a guarantee. Also, people are pissed because the security workarounds can throttle your CPU performance up to 30%, which
is crazy.
Is a significant percentage if it's going that high. Although they say between 5 and 30%. So if it was throttling at like 5 or 10%, I'd be like, yeah, I can live with that. But if it was 30%, I probably would be pretty pissed. And the reason why this story was coming out specifically is because of these class action lawsuits, which have been filed by plaintiffs from Oregon, California, and Indiana, who are people who own the CPU-based computers and are basically saying that because these chips were susceptible to this, that they are inherently faulty. Which is not an unreasonable argument to make.
It's not. It's amazing to me that, Intel's been in the business a long time. This must have been a deep-rooted problem because of the past all their testing, for years. That's got to be, it's a serious fucking hidden bug deep in the architecture.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. If only it actually set them on fire, but...
If only. But this is why I use AMD, Lex. Fuck Intel. Intel's great, usually. This actually, this actually makes me remember that our dear friend Peter Brown has been having some computer problems recently where his Intel, his processor, was being throttled by a lot. This may be part of the problem.
He's fallen victim to a James Bond movie.
Da 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 da. I just love that they gave these bugs fucking awesome names.
They did, oh man, they're so awesome. Javier Bardem showed up at...
Yeah, he's in your computer.
He's in your computer. He's shooting your CPU with a silenced pistol.
Yep.
So crazy. Now we've reached the end of the show. Let's talk about games. Because
games.
I don't like doing that very often.
No.
Apparently, we have games that are coming out. Ooh, there's only... Wikipedia only lists one game coming out next week.
Yeah, it's a tough time. Tough time of the year for game releases.
The Escapists 2 coming out for the Nintendo Switch. And, blah. I don't know. Street Fighter 5 Arcade Edition coming out for the Windows and the PS4 on the 16th.
That's kind of cool, I guess.
And then games we're going to talk about next week, I guess. There's, as we move farther forward, like into February, there's a significant handful of releases. So
yeah, it's just right after the holidays. Everything's been released.
I think that what's the next big release that people are looking forward to is what? Monster Hunter? I think it's Monster Hunter.
Dragon Ball Fighter Z has gotten a lot of attention, at least from the fighting game community people.
But that stuff comes out at the end of this month, so there isn't really much until then. But
we got Gintama Rumble and World to the West.
Oh, I know what those are.
Yeah, and Deathmark.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's like the most generic fucking video game name ever.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the show. We've reached the end of it. We would have spent more time on upcoming game releases, but there just aren't any to talk about.
There aren't any.
Oh, I will point out, though, real quick, I just noticed, there is a Digimon game that's coming out on the 19th that is coming out for the Vita. So,
woo! Who says the Vita's dead? Who says the Vita's dead?
There's a Vita release on February 2nd. There's so many more Vita releases. Oh, my God.
Come on, Geo Corsi. Where you at? Fucking give me the games.
Yeah. Visual novels.
Visual novels. So anime porn on the go.
Yeah, on the go. Because when you're on the train and you gotta have anime sexy ladies, that's what the Vita is for. You gotta have that console that means life.
Yes, exactly. You gotta. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Anyway. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Don't Copy That Floppy, a weekly video game news podcast with your hosts Lex and Booj.
Yes. Thanks for doing that for me.
Yeah, no. If you want to find us on social media, we are most active on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us on Facebook by searching Don't Copy That Floppy. You can find us on Twitter with our handle at DCTF Podcast. If you want to support the show, there are a couple of really great ways that you can do that. One of them is you can just go over to our charming benefactors, chipbit.net, where our show is hosted, and you can just, listen to their awesome 24-hour streaming chiptune music stuff. It's great. It's really good. I don't know, just frequent the website. I think they'll get ad revenue off of it. I don't know how ad revenue works, but but yeah, another way you can do it is by finding us on iTunes by searching Don't Copy That Floppy and leaving us a rating and review. Say how much you like the show. If you were going to say something bad, just don't do that. And finally,
just send me an email if you want to say something bad.
Yeah.
say it directly.
Yeah. And finally, if you want to support us and you have so much money you just don't know what to do with it all, you can find us on Patreon by, once again, searching Don't Copy That Floppy. And you can give us money each month, and you can get access to bonus content that's me and Dan talking about fun stuff. And yes.
I let him out of the basement and tie him. Mm-hmm. Let him record something, and it goes right back in the basement.
Right back in there. That gag, it goes right back in his mouth. Gotta save those vocal cords for just when we're doing content.
They're brittle.
But that's about it for us. So until next time, Chris, what do people have to remember?
Don't copy that floppy.